And we're back. I'm Alek Dincoff, voice actor, here with Steve Todd, creator and founder of Open Source Workplace. If this is your first time joining us, welcome and subscribe and hit that bell right here down in the corner here. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alek. Thank you for the very excited introduction there. One of the things as we sort of kick off about this, right? So Open Source Workplace, what is all that about? It's all about maximizing workplace productivity and employee experience. So one of the things I thought we could do is this little intro section is take a productivity thing, a productivity action item or insight or something that we could add into this that people could do. So from our article, 100 Ways to Be Productive at Work, here's a list of 100 items. So I'm going to take one. I'm just going to talk about that for like 2 seconds so that basically people can take it. So number one, that's a good place to start. Number one productivity tool is recommended. It's track and limit the time you spend on tasks. So it basically says that 17% of people don't really know how passage of time moves when they're on tasks. And a tool it recommends is called Rescue Time. It's a tool that I use. Basically, every week I get an update. It tells me how I'm actually using the site or actually using the web. And it sort of gives me the direction on, okay, you're on your computer. Here's how much time you're spending doing this activity, that activity, or in this particular site. It's really interesting to me because I get to see, oh, I spent that much time at Open Source Workplace this week, which is really interesting. So I know it probably took you a bit of a spool there because you weren't anticipating this, but I just wanted to share one productivity hack that people can sort of move forward with.
Tools like that are huge. They're great, whether it be in the office, in the workplace, especially if you're working from home. Imagine all the distractions people who work from home deal with. And these distractions, they don't seem like much, got to get the mail or, better put a load of laundry in before I take this phone call. Things like this, it's not a big deal, but when you see how much time adds up to what you're actually doing, heaven forbid you try and do errands in the middle of your day, it'll blow you away exactly how much time is being spent and how inefficient you are until you actually look and track your progress. I've heard a lot of goods and a lot of bads when it comes to your own schedule after you track and look at it with programs like that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, there's something else that we'd like to share today, and that's how to be productive when splitting time between working at home and in the office, not just with software and tools like we talked about. But this article, it's out right now on our podcast. The article is also in readable form on Open Source Workplace. Check it out. It's something both Steve and I mean, we care about it so much because we both work at home. He gets dragged into the office. A lot of people are in this similar situation. The article itself talks about motivation, flexibility, and focus. So, Steve, how important is motivation, and what can someone do to increase their motivation?
Let's start off with an easy one then, right? So I think it was a couple of weeks ago we talked about what's the difference between job satisfaction and employee engagement, right? And we sort of deciphered that down. It's motivation, job satisfaction being external motivation and employee engagement being the internal motivation. So getting that back. So how do you motivate yourself? You're either going to be internal or external factors, right? And I think whenever you are working from home, it's got to be more internal. It's got to come from you. So I think the number one thing that anybody can ever do to increase their own motivation is, one, do what they love. I just actually did an interview there a couple of days ago with Michael Ippolito. Michael Ippolito is a service provider on Open Source Workplace. And one of the things that I admire about him is no matter what time of day it is, he's always energized. So in the podcast, I actually asked him, what actually gives you that energy? And the number one thing he says, I've loved what I've done and what I'm doing for 30 years. And that's what just comes out, right? And then you go and you take the insight. Other things he said, I exercise. He gets up at 5 a.m. each day to do those exercises. So again, these are things that come from within him. There are probably external factors he uses to influence and keep himself going. But in essence, motivation has got to come from within. And then I always go back to the other forms of motivation being Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So how do you climb up that hierarchy? You're laughing because I do go to it all the time. It's my go-to tool. You know, you have to get your basics right. And if those basics are not right, then you will never be motivated to the next level. It's so important to manage that motivation, motivation. I also find for myself, if I don't sleep well, if I'm not eating right, then that also plays hugely into my motivation. And I sort of see it as my responsibility to ensure I am sleeping well, I am eating well, I am getting exercise, and I am doing what I love. And those are all the internal things that I can manage. There are external factors that I help pull me out of those and help me do those things whenever I'm maybe not as motivated. But primarily, that's how I would say people could achieve greater motivation.
I love how you brought a very interpersonal, your own hierarchy of needs, bringing up Maslow. Very cool. But for focus, what are the main distractions when working at home? I know we've talked about this in length, different things that could distract people, but what are the main across the board distractions?
I think it could be anything, right? It could be TV, it could be the dog, it could be the postman, like you said. It can be absolutely anything. The discipline required when you work from home is really, it's down to the individual, right? How are you going to seclude yourself? How are you going to provide yourself with an envelope that, whatever time of day it is, we're all productive at different times of day. We all can be focused at different times of the day, and that's on the individual to work out, okay, am I actually an early person? Am I a mid-morning person, a mid-afternoon person, an evening person? How does that interact then with your team? Does that sort of the time that you're productive, does that actually impact your work with your team as well? I know you want to focus on the distractions, but I think the distractions are just there's so many. And sort of what I would sort of suggest, and you know, you can obviously attest to this too, it really is finding that close, quiet environment that actually does allow you to stay focused, to stay maintained, and actually, you know, keep yourself focused. And you know, I will talk to the tool that I always use, Brain.fm. It is, you know, I put this on. There is actually a focus play that you can put on, and for 2 hours you plug in and it just alters your waves, and you just get in and you can do whatever focus work you want. It's a free tool. I love it. And that's what I would do. But again, like, so I could throw this back to you, someone who has to be very disciplined. You're a voice actor. You have to have a certain environment. The distractions, yeah, you can use so easily the distractions of noise, a dog, whatever that is, to sort of detract from what you have to produce. So what are the key things that you have to actually have in place so that you can be focused?
Are you actually asking me, or are you
I'm
just
actually
finding
asking
this?
you, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So the things that actually need to be in play for me to focus. So sleep is a huge factor for me. If I haven't slept well, I'm not my best. I know that. I used to think that my best, most productive times came in the dead of night, like real late, because I was younger. I'm starting to find out that it's not the dead of night that I need. It's the lack of distractions, like we're talking about, because at night, no one's awake. At night, most distractions are done. They can wait till tomorrow, right? No emails are coming in. But I find that in the early morning as well, I'll be just as productive, if not more productive and motivated if I've slept well. And I read a book, I think it was How to Build a 5-Level, or I forget the book title, but the one CEO lists that in the morning, they do everything they possibly have to get done that day, because in the afternoon, it's like a Wild West gun show. And I feel like more and more that starts to associate with my life. Like the things that need to get done, I can get them done, knocked out in the morning when there's no distractions. And in the evening, that's when all the creative juices are flowing. That's when I want to play with a script. That's when I want to connect with people. That's when I want to embrace more of myself rather than what needs to get done for the daily humdrum. So a good schedule, sleep, and lack of distractions. That's what it takes for me. Well, of course, silence for voice, right?
Of course. And as you know, I'm a big proponent of the early morning. You know, I'm up at 4 a.m. most mornings, simply because of that fact, right? I can get so much more done. What I can get done in 90 minutes before I go to do the day job would probably take me 3 or 4 hours working, you know, surrounded by distractions. So.
It's amazing. It's amazing because I'm in that phase of my life where I was in that younger mentality, right? So I know what it was for me, and the shift is just tremendous.
Yeah, I'm way past that younger mentality.
What? What do you mean? No. So I gotta ask. Sometimes when you're working from home, you don't have the tools that you would have in the office, right? It's just inevitable in any industry. Your colleagues may not be right next to you, so you have to either get in touch with them, phone, email, etc. And then there's issues when the colleagues don't know how to get in touch with you in case you're on the road that day and not at your home office. What are some things that you can do to avoid mishaps with lack of either programs or tools or communication between colleagues?
Yeah, and you're right. Whenever you do split that time, how do you keep all that together? And the number one thing you have to have in place is internet connection and redundancy, right? So in essence, should something happen with your main internet connection, then you've got another opportunity, another way to actually log back in. Because if you're not connected, yes, we have cell phones, so therefore, you know, you probably have connected through work as well, but to have access on your work laptop, PC, whatever that is, that's critical. And then we get to the technology tools. One of the big things that I'm finding that I'm using more and more is Zoom. So we're using Zoom right here, but in the workplace, working from home and connecting with people in the office, just instead of having that, you know, email exchange, actually just getting on and doing a video where you're able to see each other, plays so much into that connectiveness, feeling connected. And it just allows those people who are in the office who are thinking people at home are doing nothing, or, you know, they don't want to be disturbed or whatever it is. It changes the perception for the person at home. It also gives them the feeling that, okay, they're involved, they're actually seeing their colleagues, and it sort of feels they're still connected. And obviously messaging tools means I'm not a big fan of messaging tools because I think they're big distractions. You know, often it's people will IM you and ask, can I call you? You know, and that's just a huge thing that people do. And then the other big distraction is email alerts. You know, those notifications that come up, oh my goodness, they bug me too. But I know that's not what we're talking about, distractions. We're trying to talk about what the tools are. But in essence, for me, it is number one is the internet. Number two is obviously the phone, the actual laptop, and then the sort of tools, the email. But the video is a big proponent and a big thing. And then the final thing that I will say is the ability to connect to shared drives, so everyone has access to the same information all the time. So teams can share, store everything in one place. So whether you're in the office one day, home the next day, you still have the same access. And you're not worried about internet connections and so on and so forth, and you're able to access and connect with everybody.
Well, I think Zoom is a huge, great tip, just because the face-to-face communication when you're working from home, especially if you work from home more often, it helps keep that social environment, and that face-to-face communication, showing that you're actually working, helps keep that disconnect between what are they doing at home and are they even working that can happen in the office. It's unfortunate that it does, but it can. We've talked about it before. There's plenty of articles out in Open Source Workplace that discuss things like this, and it is so critical. And to see other
No, just before you cut off, one of the things I want to talk about that sort of on that Zoom, just to follow on from your point, one of the things that I find that is really useful, if you're doing any sort of product development, or you're doing any planning, or you're doing any whiteboarding, recording it in Zoom is actually so beneficial, because even those people who are not in the room, or you want to look back and go, what was the mindset? What was the thinking? What actually was being asked of us then? Simply having that recording feature with Zoom is really helpful. And obviously, you just have to be careful. Everyone gets notified when you're in Zoom. If someone starts recording, everyone gets alerted. This is being recorded. So it's not like people are doing this unbeknownst to everybody else. But that's just one thing that I find that is very helpful.
I could see a lot of benefits with that. Like, how did we get to this idea? Go back and watch the recording. Oh, yeah, that's why. That makes a lot of sense. Very good. Well, for other tips and tricks just like this, take a look at Open Source Workplace. Like, share, subscribe this video, introduce to your friends. Perhaps they want to know. I'm sure they do. Who wouldn't? And until then, we'll see you next week. Bye now.